Welcome to the 1990s Raddest Dramas compilation video from our Rad Flicks series here on YouTube. Check out the Rad Flicks podcast and enjoy the greatest dramas of the 1990s, the raddest dramas. Remember to like, comment, and subscribe. Here we go. Next category, Raddest Drama 1990. 7 finalists for Raddest Drama 1990. First one being The Hunt for Red October, directed by John McTiernan, starring Alec Baldwin and Sean Connery. This movie did get mentioned earlier on in the series, approximately 10 years ago, with Das Boot, The Boat. It was the greatest submarine movie of all time, and I did mention in that one that I believe this is the second greatest submarine movie of all time is The Hunt for Red October, starring Albert Finney and Gabriel Byrne from Joel and Ethan Coen. Miller's Crossing. He'd already made Blood Simple and Raising Arizona at this time, or the Coens had already made that. This is a movie about Tom Regan, this character that's an advisor to the mob, and a lot of loyalty questions, things like that, set in like Prohibition era. Check out my Coen Brothers episode on this channel. Talk about this movie. Up next, directed by Martin Scorsese, starring Robert De Niro, Joe Pesci, Ray Liotta. It's Goodfellas. Lorraine Bracco. This is the true story of Henry Hill. The critics, they got it right. I mean, this is one of Martin Scorsese's best movies. I love Martin Scorsese. Check out my Scorsese list on this channel. Today, Joepinionated List, Movie Edition, Top 10 Best Films Directed by Martin Scorsese. Check out my Robert De Niro list on this channel. This time it's movie edition, Robert De Niro's top 10 acting performances. And be sure to check out my upcoming Joe Pesci list on this channel. Joe Pesci, I'm pretty sure, won the Oscar for this movie for Best Supporting Actor. He deserved it. One of the greatest gangster movies, if not the greatest gangster movie ever made. Next up, Raddest Drama finalist goes to Misery, directed by Rob Reiner, starring James Caan and Kathy Bates. Edge of Your Seat Suspense, written by Stephen King. Next finalist, directed by Jerry Zucker, starring Demi Moore, Whoopi Goldberg, Patrick Swayze. The movie is Ghost. Patrick Swayze is murdered by a mugger, seeks help of a psychic, Whoopi Goldberg, to help him communicate with his girlfriend, Demi Moore. It was a big deal for anybody that was older than me. Next finalist, directed by Gary Marshall, starring Richard Gere and Julia Roberts again, Pretty Woman. Basically, that Richard Gere, he needs a prostitute. And who does he get? He gets Julia Roberts, and they fall in love. Pretty Woman, Raddest Drama, 1990 finalist. And the last one, directed by Abel Ferreira, King of New York, starring David Caruso and Christopher Walken. Frank White gets out of jail and returns to the streets of New York, and he wants to take things over again. Another amazing mobster movie, King of New York, Christopher Walken. And Christopher Walken, when he wants to be badass, he's as scary as they come. And the winner for Raddest Drama of 1990 goes to, probably not surprising, it goes to Goodfellas, directed by Martin Scorsese, starring all those people: Ray Liotta, Robert De Niro, Joe Pesci, Martin Scorsese. Runner-ups go to Joel and Ethan Coen's Miller's Crossing in second place. And in third place, we got a tie between The Hunt for Red October and Ghost. Ghost got a lot of votes as well. Goodfellas, Raddest Drama, 1990. Next, Raddest Drama. For Raddest Drama, we have 8 finalists. The first being Fried Green Tomatoes, directed by John Avnet, starring Mary Louise Parker, Mary Stuart Masterson, Jessica Tandy. Thanks for only having 2 names, Jessica. And Kathy Bates. And I remember actually watching this one a fair bit when I was a little kid, being a little bit traumatized by the opening scene. Tearjerker. I remember thinking that when I was a kid, that it was actually quite sad. Next up, directed by John Singleton. The movie is Boys in the Hood, classic, starring Morris Chestnut, Lawrence Fishburne, Ice Cube, Cuba Gooding Jr., set in South Central Los Angeles, following Trey, Doughboy, and Ricky through the hood, having some Mr. Browns. Next up, directed by Jonathan Demme, Silence of the Lambs, Raddest Drama, 1991, no question. Jodie Foster, Anthony Hopkins. Next up, starring Jeff Bridges and Robin Williams, The Fisher King, directed by Terry Gilliam, one of my all-time favorite directors. 1991's The Fisher King. It follows the relationship between Jack, he's a shock jock, and Perry, a homeless man, haunted by a vision. Together, they venture on a quest together in the streets of New York. Terry Gilliam, just so creative. Also, Amanda Plummer is excellent in this movie. Next up for Raddest Drama, Cape Fear, Martin Scorsese directed, Robert De Niro, Nick Nolte, Jessica Lange, Juliette Lewis. Stacked lineup, and this one delivers. Next up, Raddest Drama 1991 goes to Sleeping with the Enemy, starring Patrick Bergen, Julia Roberts, Kevin Anderson, and Elizabeth Lawrence. Directed by Joseph Rubin, This is a movie about a psycho ex, edge of your seat, Julia Roberts on a tear. Think about it anytime I arrange things in the cupboard. If you've seen it, you know what I'm talking about. Next, finalists, Thelma and Louise, starring Gina Davis and Susan Sarandon, Brad Pitt, and Harvey Keitel. Directed by Ridley Scott. Gina Davis, incredible. Susan Sarandon, incredible. Up next, directed by Oliver Stone, starring Val Kilmer. The movie is The Doors, also starring Meg Ryan, Kyle MacLachlan, Kevin Dillon. Biographical film about Jim Morrison, lead singer of The Doors. Down here, one of the movies in the background here is Dennis Leary's No Cure for Cancer stand-up, which was one of my favorites of all time, and his take on The Doors. I'm drunk, I'm nobody. I'm drunk, I'm famous. I'm drunk, I'm dead. Raddest Drama 1991 goes to Boys in the Hood. That's the winner. Raddest Drama 1991 is Boys in the Hood. Certified rad, 100%. Runner-up for Raddest Drama 1991 for Rad Flicks, Silence of the Lambs. Next up, Raddest Drama 1992. Finalists, we got a bunch again, so I'm just kind of whip through them. First one is Scent of a Woman, directed by Martin Brest, starring Chris O'Donnell and Al Pacino. Check out my Al Pacino list on this channel. It's at My Friend Joe on YouTube. In 1992, Al Pacino won a Best Actor Oscar. Frank Slade in Scent of a Woman. Love Al Pacino. I love this role. I love this movie. Lonely blind man spending a weekend on the town. Next up, Unforgiven, finalist for Raddest Drama. That's oxymoron. Unforgiven, Gene Hackman, Morgan Freeman, Clint Eastwood. Western, it kind of brings you back to the classic Westerns of the 70s and late 60s, which Clint Eastwood was a part of many of them, especially the Spaghettis, Sergio Leone's amazing movies. And Unforgiven is not quite as good as those movies, almost. Next up, Raddest Drama. There in a stack behind me, Reservoir Dogs, Quentin Tarantino, one of the greatest scripts ever. Tim Roth, Chris Penn is incredible. Michael Madsen's great. Harvey Keitel, Steve Buscemi. I mean, I bought the Mr. Pink version. You could buy different color DVDs when they came out, and I went with Steve Buscemi. Up next, Raddest Drama, Last of the Mohicans, directed by Michael Mann, Madeline Stowe, and Daniel Day-Lewis. Next, finalist, Raddest Drama, A Few Good Men, starring Tom Cruise and Jack Nicholson, directed by Rob Reiner. He just has so many movies on Rad Flicks. You Can't Handle the Truth. Jack Nicholson episode on this channel. Number 9 all-time Jack Nicholson performances, Colonel Nathan Jessup in 1992's A Few Good Men. Number 9 all-time Joepinionated List, I'm going with A Few Good Men. Like and subscribe. Next finalist, directed by Paul Verhoeven, starring Sharon Stone and Michael Douglas in Basic Instinct. A detective becomes entangled in a dangerous game of cat and mouse with a seductive novelist who may have been involved in a series of brutal crimes. We talked about Fatal Attraction in the past. Very rated R. Sharon Stone's just a titan. Everything she's ever been in. I love Sharon Stone as an actress, one of the best ever. Next finalist is The Bodyguard, starring Whitney Houston and Kevin Costner, directed by Mick Jackson. So it would have been David Spade in 1992. Was it Spade in America on SNL? I remember when he did this, The Bodyguard, the movie review. Went and saw The Bodyguard on the weekend and want my money back. I Will Always Love You, Whitney Houston on the soundtrack, the biggest deal of the year. This movie was one of the biggest movies of the year, really, was The Bodyguard. The soundtrack was one of the best-selling soundtracks of all time, Whitney Houston's cover of Dolly Parton's I Will Always Love You. Next up on finalists for Raddest Drama 1992, we're going with School Ties, directed by Robert Mandel, starring Matt Damon and Brendan Fraser. School Ties. This movie about this Jewish guy that gets a scholarship and stuff he has to deal with. Early movie from Matt Damon. Brendan Fraser is already a star at this point. School Ties. One of the greatest soundtracks of all time goes to Cameron Crowe's Singles, starring Bridget Fonda, Campbell Scott. Movie not so great in my opinion. The soundtrack was incredible. And I love Cameron Crowe, and he's just so good at these young people movies. We've had Cameron Crowe obviously on the list before, and we'll get him again. I mean, his story is immortalized in that movie, Almost Famous. Yeah, he worked for
Rolling Stone as a kid. Up next, Raddest Drama, A League of Their Own, directed by Penny Marshall, Tom Hanks, Gina Davis, Madonna, Rosie O'Donnell. Next, Glengarry Glen Ross, directed by James Foley, starring Jack Lemmon, Al Pacino, Alec Baldwin, group of salesmen, and they need to close as many deals as possible to save their jobs. Overall, great movie. Next up again is The Player, starring Tim Robbins, finished finalist for Raddest Drama, directed by Robert Altman. And final finalist for Raddest Drama, directed by Woody Allen. There's a Woody Allen episode on this channel. Today on Joepinionated List, movie edition, I'm getting ready to count down the top 10 movies from writer, director Woody Allen. Starring Woody Allen and Mia Farrow. It's Husbands and Wives, one of his classics. But like every other Woody Allen movie, couples breaking up, cheating on their wives, exploring infidelity. And the winner of Raddest Drama 1992 goes to Reservoir Dogs, directed by Quentin Tarantino. This one right here, Mr. White, Mr. Brown. Reservoir Dogs, winner of Raddest Drama. Runner-up goes to Unforgiven, directed by Clint Eastwood. Next category, Raddest Drama. Raddest Drama 1993, the finalists are California, starring Brad Pitt and Juliette Lewis, directed by Dominic Sena. Basically, these people are documenting a bunch of serial killers going across the country, visiting a bunch of different sites. Along the way, they meet up with some bad people. Brad Pitt was still sort of sniffing around at being super famous at this time. That was the role where I really remember him. I don't remember watching True Romance when I was a kid. It was probably a little bit later. First movie I really remember Brad Pitt was California. Second finalist goes to Philadelphia, starring Denzel Washington and Tom Hanks, directed by Jonathan Demme again. Another movie directed by Jonathan Demme. It's a movie about this guy getting fired for letting his company know that he has AIDS. There's a trial in Philadelphia. Incredible soundtrack. Next up again, behind me there, right here, True Romance, directed by Tony Scott, Christian Slater, Patricia Arquette. Patricia Arquette is so cool, and love those sunglasses that are later on used in Kill Bill. Incredible movie, incredible story, incredibly violent. Next up is Schindler's List, horrifying. The Holocaust. Oscar Schindler was this Nazi that sympathized and helped save the lives of some of the Jewish prisoners. Ralph Fiennes plays this evil Nazi. His performance is incredible. Ben Kingsley. I think it should be mandatory that you should have to watch this movie at least once. Next finalist, Groundhog Day. Harold Ramis, Bill Murray. Get a shout out for Raddest Drama. Another finalist, A Bronx Tale, directed by Robert De Niro, starring Chaz Palminteri and Robert De Niro. Collateral. Joe Pesci has a cameo in this movie. C. Next finalist is What's Love Got to Do with It, directed by Brian Gibson, starring Lawrence Fishburne, Angela Bassett, based on the life of Tina Turner. Her relationship with Ike Turner. Rest in peace to Tina Turner. I love Tina Turner in Mad Max Beyond Thunderdome. I mentioned that in that movie on Rad Flicks. Next up, starring Tom Hanks and Meg Ryan, kind of romantic comedy. Rosie O'Donnell, Sleepless in Seattle. Meet me at the Empire State Building. We got to finally go to the Empire State Building. What was the first movie I thought of? Sleepless in Seattle, directed by Nora Ephron. Next, Raddest Drama 1993, directed by Brian De Palma, starring Sean Penn and Al Pacino. The movie is Carlito's Way. Quentin Tarantino just idolizes Brian De Palma, and for good reason. Carlito's Way is about this guy that's getting out of jail, wants to go the straight and narrow, and has a tough time with it. Pacino has so many memorable roles that this one easily gets forgotten about from time to time, and it's fantastic. Next up, A Perfect World, starring Kevin Costner and Clint Eastwood. I can't remember why, but Kevin Costner ends up kidnapping this boy. He's a Jehovah's Witness. It's just about their adventure together to being chased across the country by Clint Eastwood and the cops riding around in an Airstream trailer. Excellent movie. A lot of heart. Perfect World gets forgot about, and it's directed by Clint Eastwood. This was his follow-up to Unforgiven. The last finalist goes to Alive, directed by Frank Marshall, starring Vincent Spano and Ethan Hawke. True story of a Uruguayan rugby team crossing the Andes. Plane crashes and the team has to survive in the Andes mountains. They don't quite know where they are. They resort to some pretty desperate measures as supplies run out. Great book too. Crazy story, narrated by John Malkovich. Nando and Canessa. Some honorable mentions: Indecent Proposal, Falling Down, What's Eating Gilbert Grape, Jack the Bear, Blood In, Blood Out, The Pelican Brief, In the Name of the Father, In the Line of Fire. The winner is True Romance, director of Top Gun and Beverly Hills Cop 2, Tony Scott. Quentin Tarantino, one of his early scripts. Runner-up goes to A Bronx Tale, and third place goes to Schindler's List. Next up, Raddest Drama. First finalist brought to you by Tim Burton. It's Ed Wood for Raddest Drama. Johnny Depp, Martin Landau, Bill Murray, Sarah Jessica Parker, I think Patricia Arquette. One of the best years for dramas, period, 1994. With plenty of Rad Flicks. Next up, written by Stephen King in the short story book Different Seasons, also including Stand By Me and Apt Pupil in the same book. The movie is The Shawshank Redemption, directed by Frank Darabont, starring Tim Robbins and Morgan Freeman. For the longest time, my favorite movie of all time. Send you here for life, and that's exactly what they'll take. Get busy living or get busy dying. Hope is a good thing, and no good thing ever dies. Andy Dufresne, Red, Brooks was here, Sewa Taneo, Rita Hayworth. Shawshank Redemption is just one of the greatest movies of all time. When the internet came out, I remember basically rigging the IMDb into making Shawshank Redemption the #1 movie of all time. I was so obsessed with it at the time. Worshipped this movie. I got to see Tim Robbins speaking at a rally in New York back in 2016, and I yelled out, "Thank you for Shawshank." Watch this movie like so many times. Me and my sister for sure watch this movie probably 20 times. Next up, from Quentin Tarantino, Pulp Fiction. I consider this to maybe be the greatest movie ever made. It's got to be in the running for greatest movie ever made. I ranked very high on my Quentin Tarantino list on this channel at My Friend Joe on YouTube. Don't even know where to start. There's so many incredible performances. I encourage you to check out my other episode on Quentin Tarantino. Bruce Willis, incredible. The Watch, Christopher Walken, the structure of the movie, the way it's shot, every performance. It's a one-off, as good as The Godfather, as good as the greatest movies ever made. It's Pulp Fiction. Next up, directed by Luc Besson, the movie is Leon, the Professional. Jean Reno and Natalie Portman star in this incredible movie. Doesn't leave you. It's haunting. It's just so well made. This is where Natalie Portman, as a kid, really made a major name for herself. One of the greatest childhood performances of all time. Riveting action drama, Leon the Professional. Up next, I got a copy of it here, my wife's copy actually. Legends of the Fall, directed by Edward Zwick, Brad Pitt, Anthony Hopkins. Legends of the Fall. I don't know how many people are just in love with this movie. My name's Forrest Gump. Funny what a young man recollects. Directed by Robert Zemeckis. Forrest Gump, starring Robin Wright, Tom Hanks, slew of others. Robert Zemeckis does it again with the special effects. Feel good story. Thank you, Robert Zemeckis. So many shows on Rad Flicks so far, including Back to the Future, Death Becomes Her. One of the greatest soundtracks of all time is Forrest Gump. I remember our drama class at our high school, we had a copy of this and wore it out. Just listened to it all year long. Story about this guy, Forrest Gump. I'm hoping to go to Monument Valley in northern Arizona at some time and check that out. Next up, for Raddest Drama 1994, we're looking at The Crow, starring Brandon Lee. Alex Proyas directed this one. Cult classic. Up next, directed by Robert Redford. This one was also up for Best Picture. It's Quiz Show, starring Ralph Fiennes and John Turturro, two of the best actors out there, based on a true story from the 1950s quiz show scene. I love John Turturro so much, and Ralph Fiennes in this movie is excellent, very easy to watch, and the raddest drama of 1994, according to the panel of normal people, goes to Shawshank Redemption, directed by Frank Darabont, based on a Stephen King book. Stephen King has got raddest in pretty much every category, I think, except for comedy so far. Tim Robbins, Morgan Freeman, just an incredible story. And in this story, they talk about The Count of Monte Cristo by Alexander Dumas. That's my favorite story of all time, is The Count of Monte Cristo. There's so many things that came from watching this movie. Love this movie. Runner-up goes to Pulp Fiction, which in all honesty has moved higher on my list of my favorite movies past Shawshank Redemption. And third place goes to Forrest Gump. And I've got both of those soundtracks right above me here, and they're both just incredible, full of bangers. Pulp Fiction, Forrest Gump, very important to me as a teenager. I owned both CDs and wore them both out. Hope is a good thing, maybe the best of things, and no good thing ever dies. Get busy living or get busy dying. That's goddamn right.
Next category is Raddest Drama 1990s.
1995. Raddest Drama 1995. The finalists, there's 8 of them. The first finalist is directed by Bryan Singer, starring Gabriel Byrne, Kevin Spacey, Benicio del Toro, Stephen Baldwin, The Usual Suspects.
You were like, you gotta watch this movie. It's so good. Joe likes more artsy movies than I do. Wasn't so sure, but oh man, it was so good. Not everyone had seen it because I've still met people over the years that haven't seen it. I'm like, well, we gotta watch it. So I've watched it quite a few times because I like want people to watch The Usual Suspects and I want to see their reaction.
Like the Kaiser Soze. Kaiser Soze. One of the best screenplays ever. It's a whodunit. Chaz Palminteri too, sorry. Kaiser Soze. This gangster. All these people are super scared of this gangster, Kaiser Soze. Scariest gangster since Tony Montana. The greatest trick the devil ever pulled was convincing the world he didn't exist. And like that, he's gone. Next up, directed by Michael Mann, starring Al Pacino and Robert De Niro. It's Heat again. So Heat, we've talked about that one quite a bit. Next up, this one's been featured on quite a number of episodes on Rad Flicks so far. You'll find us on the Martin Scorsese Top 10 Movies Countdown on this channel. You'll also find it on Robert De Niro's Top 10 Movies on this channel. You'll soon find it on Joe Pesci's Top 10 Movies on this channel at My Friend Joe. This one co-stars Sharon Stone, James Woods in Casino.
1995, Casino. I like Casino more than Goodfellas. This is usually the debate amongst my friends anyways. I don't know if that's normal or not, but these are the kind of things we like to discuss.
James Woods and Robert De Niro and Joe Pesci have worked with Martin Scorsese quite a few times. Funny story, when I first rented it with another person on the Rad Flicks panel, Ian, we watched the second cassette first. This was a 2 cassette movie. We're just like, wow, this movie's intense. Didn't really know what was going on, but like, wow, like, holy crap. And it made it to the end of the movie and the credits start rolling. We're like, shit. An hour and a half later, we decided to put the first one back on, and then I proceeded to watch the whole movie again. Sam Ace Rothstein and Sharon Stone nominated for an Academy Award for this movie, and she didn't take it home. I think that's really disappointing because I like her role in this way more than I like Susan Sarandon in Dead Man Walking. Wasn't crazy about Dead Man Walking. It's no Casino, and what Sharon Stone did in this show, other than Elizabeth Shue maybe in Leaving Las Vegas, I'm not sure if she was nominated in that category too. She might have been supporting. I thought Sharon Stone deserved it.
I always just think of Sharon Stone when I think of Casino, and I know coming out of the house in that glam white outfit. I love Sharon Stone. It's a long movie. That's one thing I find about Scorsese movies. They're really long.
Fired as editor or something in the last few movies are really long.
They're too long. Newer movies are so long. I watch them in like 2 or 3 sittings because I can't sit through a 3-hour movie.
Loosely based on a true story, which is kind of cool. And there's an episode on YouTube. I'll put a link in the description about this guy who compares it to the real history. Braveheart's another one where like Braveheart's like not a single thing about that movie is true. It's sort of loosely based on actual events. I think the guy actually who wrote Casino wrote it based off an article that he saw or read or a newscast he saw about this couple having a very public argument in their driveway. Those scenes where they're arguing in the driveway are just incredible. So I love that. Don Rickles as well is in this movie. Finalist, Raddest Drama, 1995 goes to Braveheart. Mel Gibson's Braveheart. That's just knocking the story. He won a bunch of awards. He wasn't even nominated for Best Actor, which is kind of nuts because he did a pretty good job in this movie. William Wallace. Not as bad as that Queen movie and how far off they went with history and that shit. Next finalist for Raddest Drama, 1995 goes to Empire Records, directed by Alan Moyle, starring Anthony LaPaglia and Liv Tyler. Steven Tyler's daughter from Aerosmith. Independent record store, Empire Records. Do you remember this one?
I do actually. One of my good friends up north, this is her favorite movie, and she is a movie buff, and this is her absolute favorite movie. There's a few people I know, Empire Records is their #1 movie.
Yeah, it all takes place in one day around a record shop. And the final finalist, starring Ethan Hawke and Julie Delpy, directed by Richard Linklater. The movie is Before Sunrise. I don't remember Before Sunrise. It went over really well in the Discord. The winner for Raddest Drama of 1995 goes to The Usual Suspects. Like the Kaiser Soze. Kaiser Soze. Kubayashi. And the runner-ups, second place goes to Casino, directed by Martin Scorsese. And third place goes to Braveheart, directed by Mel Gibson. Next category from the Overlook Hotel is Raddest Drama of 1996. There's 5 for finalists of Raddest Drama 1996. The first directed by legendary director Milos Forman, starring Woody Harrelson and Courtney Love in an incredible role she played as well. I think she cleaned up off the dope for this one. The movie is The People versus Larry Flynt. True story about Hustler founder Larry Flynt and about a trial that he had. Norm Macdonald's also in this movie too. Woody Harrelson and Courtney Love, tour de force with one of the greatest directors of all time, Milos Forman.
Woody Harrelson was awesome in this movie. Woody Harrelson can act. He's not just the dumb farm boy from Iowa, tending bar at Cheers. That boy can act.
Milos, and he was nominated again for Best Director on this one after taking home Best Director twice before this with One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest and Amadeus. Next finalist for Raddest Drama of 1996 goes to Danny Boyle's Train Spotting, starring Ewan McGregor and Ewan Bremer. I want to get 2 Ewans, very British of them, and Danny Boyle directing Train Spotting. This is a movie about some junkies. It's under drama here. You could say it's an action, you could say it's a comedy. It kind of fits under most umbrellas. High paced, incredible special effects. You really kind of get an idea of what it feels like to be addicted to heroin. Really think about him swimming into the toilet bowl, sinking into the rug when he's overdosing.
But yeah, it was such a good dive into like what it's like to be addicted to substances and have some type of a substance use disorder. But seeing that movie, you really can feel like how awful and how the agony and the ecstasy of drug addiction. And I think this was Ewan McGregor's kind of breakout role.
Next up, mentioned multiple times on this channel as well, Joel and Ethan Coen co-directed this one, starring Frances McDormand, William H. Macy, Steve Buscemi. The movie is Fargo, based on a true story. Not at all a true story, but the Coens like to put that at the start of their movie. It's such a great idea. The story of Marge Gunderson, pregnant police officer played by Frances McDormand, one of the greatest characters ever. And you got to throw in William H. Macy to that as well. His character, one of the best characters in movie history as well. Steve Buscemi, one of the greatest villains in a movie as well. Fargo, it's one of the greatest movies ever made. It's one of the Coen brothers' greatest movies. Like I said, check out my channel. Check out my Coen brothers list on this channel.
Oh, geez.
Yeah.
Frances McDormand is incredible in this movie. William H. Macy, like what a story. Steve Buscemi, like
I discovered this show from watching Siskel and Ebert, and I remember watching the scene that they showed on it, which is from the trailer when the bad guys are at the lady's window going to break in and kidnap her. Just that scene alone, I remember just being horrified watching it. It just seemed so real, and Coen, that was my first introduction to the Coen brothers, was this movie Fargo. And I think one of the best movies I've ever seen. If I rank the decade, this is definitely going to come up in the top 10 list for myself anyways. Next up, 1996, directed by Stephen Hopkins, starring Val Kilmer, Michael Douglas. The movie is The Ghost in the Darkness. I remember wanting to watch it just for the stars, and I remember not being that crazy about it. Final finalist for Raddest Drama 1996, directed by Billy Bob Thornton, starring Dwight Yoakam, Billy Bob Thornton, John Ritter. The movie is Sling Blade. At the time, this is when I thought I was being a movie nerd. All I was really doing was watching Siskel and Ebert every single week. I'd find those movies and then go watch them. And especially when they said something was great. Billy Bob Thornton, writes this role for himself and slays literally, specifically with a lawnmower blade. Not really the most watchable movie, but definitely some memorable performances. They stay with you, I reckon.
I love this movie. I'm a big fan of Dwight Yoakam. Did he ever kill it in this movie too? But yeah, Billy Bob Thornton, what a performance he put in. This is an awesome movie. Dwight Yoakam's like the villain in this movie.
The winner is Fargo for Raddest Drama of 1996. Runner-up going to Train Spotting. Second place with a bullet is Train Spotting. Right. Next category, Raddest Drama. There's 9 finalists. The finalists are, first up, Boogie Nights from 1997, directed by Paul Thomas Anderson. PTA brings it with Boogie Nights. Please check out my Paul Thomas Anderson episode on this channel, Boogie Nights. Up next from 1997, we're going with Ang Lee's movie The Ice Storm, starring Kevin Kline, Joan Allen. It's dark. It's a dark movie, and it's kind of weird, and it's sort of artsy fartsy, and it's all those things, but it's also Ang Lee in his prime. Beautiful movie. This movie, like Ang Lee, also has a lot of textures, like very similar to Martin Scorsese and Paul Thomas Anderson. Ice Storm, great drama. Sigourney Weaver was in that too. Next up, directed by Harmony Korine in his directorial debut. The movie is Gummo, starring Jacob Reynolds and Nick Sutton. And Gummo is similar to Larry Clark's Kids. It's pretty intense. It follows these residents of this small tornado-ravaged town in Ohio. Bleak look at America. White trash America. Kids like killing cats and selling them to the restaurant so they can get money to buy glue. 10 out of 10 on the weird scale. Gummo, 1997. Next finalist from James Cameron. The movie is Titanic. This one stars Leonardo DiCaprio and Kate Winslet. I love Leo. I love Kate. James Cameron's great too. They found the Titanic in the 80s. Looking at the Titanic on the big screen when it first came out, thinking the special effects were jaw-dropping. It's from James Cameron, so you're not expecting anything less than an awesome event. Terminator 2 and True Lies had just come out. Then Titanic, this huge thing, broke all the records. It was the biggest movie of all time at the time. And then I think broken by maybe Avatar later, another James Cameron movie. The soundtrack was a huge deal. Celine Dion, My Heart Will Go On. That winter was like Titanic. This song was just on all the time. Even when the VHSs of this came out, that was just another big deal as well. Everybody had to get a copy of Titanic. I remember the amount of secondhand copies at the video store was the most I had ever seen. Anyways, Titanic's huge. If you want to watch Titanic, just go to your local thrift store and they'll gladly sell you a copy today. Also, River Phoenix was originally slated. I think James Cameron had River Phoenix in mind for the role of Jack before he tragically passed away. Next up, directed by James L. Brooks, starring Jack Nicholson, Helen Hunt, Greg Kinnear, and Cuba Gooding Jr. The movie is As Good as It Gets. Check out my Jack Nicholson episode on this channel. This movie definitely comes up. Excellent role. It's a great script with this guy. He's got OCD, and Helen Hunt is excellent in this movie as well. Next finalist, Raddest Drama, directed by Gus Van Sant. The movie is Good Will Hunting, one of my wife's favorite movies, starring Matt Damon, Robin Williams, also co-written by Ben Affleck. So Matt Damon and Ben Affleck wrote this script, and that's sort of what got them super famous. Robin Williams is incredible in this movie. I know a lot of people, this is like probably their favorite movie. So many lines. Good Will Hunting. Up next, we get the return of Quentin Tarantino with Jackie Brown, starring Pam Grier, Samuel L. Jackson, one of my favorite Robert De Niro roles, as well as Jackie Brown. Check out my Robert De Niro episode on this channel. Check out my Quentin Tarantino episode on this channel, where you can find out more where these movies and roles rank according to me. From an Elmore Leonard novel, Jackie Brown. The novel was called Rum Punch. I remember reading Elmore Leonard after hearing Quentin Tarantino was going to make a movie from an Elmore Leonard book, and then I ended up reading a bunch of them. This movie was a bit of a letdown after two titans in Pulp Fiction and Reservoir Dogs, two other scripts that went out the door, that he sold, Natural Born Killers and True Romance. So it was a bit of a letdown. It's still a bit of a letdown to this day, in my opinion, but some incredible performances. It's got its moments. This is one that should have been a bit shorter. Just an opinion. I love De Niro in this movie. Jackie Brown. Next finalist has been mentioned in pretty much every category so far. David Fincher's The Game, starring Michael Douglas and Sean Penn. Michael Douglas, Sean Penn, David Fincher. All time, like one of the greatest thrillers ever. The Game. And last, and certainly least in my eyes, but very high across the panel here, is LA Confidential. I'm sorry, I just never got into this one. Directed by Curtis Hanson. Huge cast. Kevin Spacey, Russell Crowe, Kim Basinger. LA Confidential, a neo-noir crime film set in the 50s Los Angeles. And the winner for Raddest Drama of... Are we in drama? Yeah, winner for Raddest Drama of 1997 goes to Good Will Hunting. Directed by Gus Van Sant. starring Robin Williams and Matt Damon, famously written by Ben Affleck and Matt Damon. Robin Williams has so many incredible roles, but this is one of his best. I think this one he really he's just on another level. Again, rest in peace, Robin Williams. We love him around here, and this movie too. And the runner-up for Raddest Drama goes to Boogie Nights, with the third place finish from Ang Lee's The Ice Storm.
Next category is Raddest Drama. The finalists are... Okay, there's quite a few honorable mentions for Raddest Drama of 1998. I'll just rattle them off. Enemy of the State, Patch Adams, What Dreams May Come, Pleasantville. I like the soundtrack. I remember Fiona Apple did The Beatles Across the Universe, and I really like that. A Simple Plan. And the finalists for Rad Flicks drama are, first off, directed by Terry Gilliam, starring Johnny Depp, Benicio del Toro, and Hunter S. Thompson's absolutely hilarious, mind-bending, trippy, rated R. Christina Ricci's in it too. Love Christina Ricci. Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas. Next up, hasn't been mentioned yet, directed by Tony Kaye, starring Ed Furlong and Edward Norton. I guess Edward Furlong. The movie is American History X.
It's a heartbreaking movie. The way they film it in black and white for part of it, and then part of it's in color, and it kind of goes along with the time when he's realizing that he's no longer a white supremacist, and the movie goes to color at that time. It's pretty relevant. It ages really well.
Banger. Great movie. Dark subject. Those KKK white supremacist dudes. Didn't win Best Picture. It's incredibly well made. And Ed Norton is incredible in this movie. Everybody is, really. Ed Furlong is so good, too. I used to love him as a child actor. The next finalist for Raddest Drama, 1998, Truman Show. We've already talked about this one. Pure to Weir. Jim Carrey living in a bubble, starring on television, similar to Ed TV. Next finalist, The Big Lebowski. This is a comedy. I wouldn't so much go as far as to call it a drama. It's just an all-around great movie. The Big Lebowski, Joel and Ethan Coen, Jeff Bridges, John Goodman, everybody, Steve Buscemi, John Turturro. Next finalist, talked about this one as well, Saving Private Ryan, directed by Steven Spielberg, all over Rad Flicks, has quite a few winners along the way. Next up, directed by Shekhar Kapoor, starring Cate Blanchett and Jeffrey Rush. I forgot to mention Shine, really. I mentioned that he won a couple of years ago. That's definitely one that I'm going to add to my movies I missed on fucking Rad Flicks and have to come back. I Circle the Wagon. Jeffrey Rush and Shine, which is a great movie and just didn't make the finalists that year. Jeffrey Rush is in this one. Elizabeth I was a great queen. Elizabeth II was the longest reigning monarch, but Elizabeth I was a great queen. And she was the daughter of King Henry VIII, the one that kept murdering all of his wives for having boys. The final finalist for Raddest Drama 1998 goes to Sam Raimi, A Simple Plan, starring Bill Paxton, Billy Bob Thornton. And the winner of Raddest Drama 1998 goes to American History X, Raddest Drama of 1998. Second place for Raddest Drama 1998 goes to Saving Private Ryan. Couldn't agree more with that either. Another excellent movie. Next category, Raddest Drama. Honorable mentions, Talented Mr. Ripley did not make the finals. That's Anthony Minghella. Arlington Road, directed by Mark Pellington. That's an excellent drama, starring Jeff Bridges, Tim Robbins, Joan Cusack, Hope Davis. The Insider did not make the finalists for Raddest Drama. Check out my Al Pacino list on this channel where it comes up. Any Given Sunday, another Al Pacino role in a Oliver Stone movie, did not make the finals. Sweet and Low Down, directed by Woody Allen, starring Sean Penn, did not make the finals. First off, directed by Paul Thomas Anderson, Magnolia, starring Tom Cruise, Julianne Moore, Jeremy Blackman, Melinda Dillon, April Grace, Louise Guzman,
Jason Robards,
Philip Seymour Hoffman, William H. Macy, Julianne Moore, Melora Walters, Danny Wells,
Philip Baker Hall.
Magnolia. Go ahead, Jess.
Magnolia, in my opinion, has the greatest ensemble cast of all time. And I'm comparing it to The Godfather 1 and 2. Start to finish, exceptional. And the fact that it didn't win Best Picture is a travesty. It is my favorite film of all time. It is my number one favorite film of all time. That's a crazy thing to say, like, definitively, right? 3 hours. It's a gargantuan watch. And I love it so much. It is a perfect, perfect film. I was in Switzerland trying to get her to watch Magnolia for for a whole year that we've been together at this point. It's 3 hours. It's a big movie. It's a big commitment. We finally watch it. We're in the mountains of Switzerland. I finally get her to watch Magnolia. She's loving it. It's great. It's all good. Then the frogs come down from the sky and she's like, what the fuck? You had me till the frogs, and it completely ruined the movie for her. And I was like, no, you don't understand. Like, and I was trying to explain it to her, but she was done. It had her. She loved it. The performance is everything. It's done. So later that day, we were watching it in the early morning. We walked down to this area from Hasliberg down to this area called Meiringen, this big long walk to get into the town. And it just so fucking happened. And this is a true story. We were walking through the woods and we came back out and we crossed this path, and the path was full of hundreds of dead, splattered frogs. That fucking happened 100% that day. It was the wildest thing that I've ever experienced in my entire life. She was shocked and she was stunned. And all I could think about in that moment was that camera zoom up to the picture and up to the artwork. But it did happen. Her in that moment, she was like, okay, it's one of the best movies I've seen. I was like, yes. Where do you begin when you're talking about the performances of Magnolia? And I think you have to start with Tom Cruise. His performance in this movie is his best performance of all time. And I'm talking about Jerry Maguire, Born on the 4th of July, Rain Man. His performance in this movie is this misogynistic asshole who's clearly like repressed and completely messed up because of the relationship he has with his father. Philip Seymour Hoffman finally gets him to come, and he sits at the bedside of his dying father, Jason Robards. Jason Robards, incredible actor from the past, and he's getting all that poison out. That is one of the most incredible scenes of acting ever. It's like right up there with Pacino, Godfather 2, when Diane Keaton tells him that she didn't lose the baby. Everything going on in his brain in that moment as he's there and he finally has this release and he's saying all that, he's swearing at him, and he breaks down and just loses it, and he becomes like that little boy again, and he's crying, don't go to. And he only didn't win because he's Tom Cruise. Because it's Tom Cruise. Julianne Moore is incredible in this film. John C. Reilly is incredible. Laura Walters is unbelievable. Philip Seymour Hoffman, as I mentioned earlier. William H. Macy. Philip Baker Hall as the game show host that has all those, all the shit that he did to Laura Walters, but it's on the top of his head, and the regret and everything. What a fucking film. It is, in my opinion, the best film of all time.
One of the reasons we have Rad Flicks is because you're right. This movie should have won Best Picture, or it should have been all over the award shows, like top to bottom, in every category. For me, the standout is John C. Reilly. When he loses his gun, that whole thing is just ridiculous. It's so real. I remember shout out to Swanson too. Next, finalist, something that at one time I did consider to be my favorite movie. My top 5 for sure, depending on how depressed I was. Directed by Sam Mendes, starring Annette Bening, Kevin Spacey, whole slew of others. This one won Best Picture. The movie is American Beauty.
His performance in that run of movies, Usual Suspects, up to American Beauty, is just incredible. Deserving of Best Actor. I don't think there is like a lead actor in a Magnolia. Otherwise, I would probably put that person up there. I think 7 different people could compete for the supporting actor in Magnolia, but he was the deserving winner of Best Actor in a movie.
Hilarious in parts. Passive aggressive humor from Kevin Spacey's character just doesn't give up. It's all downhill from here. They're threatening his job, and then he just turns it on him and walks out with a bunch of pay and just doesn't give a shit. It's so funny. It's for this guy that just give it up. He's just done. Next up, talked about this one already. Directed by Milos Forman, starring Paul Giamatti, Courtney Love, Danny DeVito, Jim Carrey. The movie is Man on the Moon, the true story of Andy Kaufman. Next up, Fight Club from David Fincher. So that we've already talked about that one quite a bit. After that, The Sixth Sense, directed by M. Night Shyamalan. We've already talked about that one a bit. Second last one is The Green Mile, directed by Frank Darabont, starring Tom Hanks and Michael Clark Duncan. It's a prison movie directed by the director of Shawshank Redemption, written by the author of Shawshank Redemption, Stephen King. He's kind of a disappointment. Frank Darabont directing another Stephen King prison movie. Thought that was going to be a home run. it wasn't. The last finalist, directed by my hero, favorite director. Check out my episode for Stanley Kubrick on this channel.
Number 7 all-time Joepinionated List, Stanley Kubrick's last movie, and possibly unfinished. Tom Cruise, Nicole Kidman, starring in Eyes Wide Shut.
He finished this movie 6 days before he passed away. Worked on this movie for a long time. The movie is Eyes Wide Shut, starring Tom Cruise and Nicole Kidman. They were married at the time. He wanted a real life couple. So Stanley Kubrick, after the 2001: A Space Odyssey, he bought this story. The original book was called Dream Story. But like these masquerade parties in like the early 1900s, somewhere in Europe. Kubrick originally planned on making it in the 80s. He was thinking Steve Martin starring in it, or possibly Woody Allen. Later on, he was considering Tom Hanks, Bill Murray, Dustin Hoffman, Warren Beatty. This movie, it's about this guy. He's a doctor. Him and his wife are having an honest conversation. Comes out his wife been fantasizing about some guy. They go to a party and all these options are coming at them. It's sort of in a dream state. The original story's in Vienna, but the movie's in New York-ish. It's kind of a dream. The cool thing about Kubrick movies is just all the layers. This one is in the bunch of Kubrick movies that I think are, better than what almost anybody else can do.
Say what you want about Tom Cruise, but Tom Cruise as an actor is fucking phenomenal. Like, he's a phenomenal actor. And in this same year, he plays, Frank T.J. Mackey in Magnolia, and he plays an almost emasculated character. That relationship that he has with Nicole Kidman is so layered and so intricate and so interesting. One thing that I read that was really interesting is like, they were so committed to Kubrick that they just like, they went to London and they were just like, we're here and we're going to stay as long as it takes. Their kids had English accents like by the time they were done filming. And I just think that's really cool. Like that, like just how, who do you do that for in these days? And it's Kubrick, right? Like the master.
Here's another movie that wasn't nominated for a single Academy Award. Yeah. In what other case do the Oscars do this? On this level, you have a legend who's died days after completing an incredible movie, and you don't nominate him once. That is embarrassing. And that's why we have Rad Flicks. We're going to honor shit. Like, that's crazy. You could read a history book and be like, oh, these are the best movies from that year, and totally miss this movie because it didn't get recognized at all. The acting, Nicole Kidman in this movie too. My favorite Nicole Kidman role.
I forget who it was. It was like Matt Damon or somebody. It's like, they should do the Oscars 10 years. 2024, it's like, here's the 2014 Oscars now. What movie is stood up to the test of time?
The winner of Raddest Drama of 1999, according to the Rad Flicks Normal People panel. Plastic Bag in the Wind goes to American Beauty. American Beauty wins Raddest Drama of 1999, right after we talk about runner-up for Raddest Drama of 1999 goes to Magnolia, and one vote short of actually tying American Beauty. That's a wrap on Rad Flicks 1999, and the 90s are over. I'm going to do a couple like roundup 80s and 90s episodes. I'm going to jump into the 2000s. I want to say thank you to the Normal People panel, especially Jesse for being here today.
Thanks for having me. I love talking movies. We don't get to do this. Let's talk movies more. Except for 2000, terrible year in movies.
A reminder to like, comment, subscribe, all that shit below. Share it. Let us know what your picks would be in each category. I'm sorry, I'm a little low on facts and high on opinions.